are continuing with Module 5, Managing for Quality and Competitiveness. This section will go over Chapter 7, Organization, Teamwork, and Communication. We don't want to forget about our learning objectives, and they include defining the organizational structure and how organizational structures develop, describe how specialization and departmentalization help an organization achieve its goals. We're going to determine how organizations assign responsibility for tasks and delegate authority, compare and contrast some common forms of organizational structure. Distinguish between groups and teams, identify the types of groups that exist in an organization. This is so important in the 21st century. Finally, we're going to describe how communication occurs in an organization. The organizational culture, and everybody talks about this all the time. We talk about the hip culture, the pop culture, this culture, that culture. But in the context of an organization, it's going to be the shared values and beliefs and traditions. And it's the same in secular communities. I mean, everything that people come together, they actually agree on, it guides the way they live, it guides what they like to listen to, it guides the people who are around them. This is the same, but it's more or less in an organization, and how people have the same kind of values and beliefs, and how those values and beliefs are modeled in their behavior. What it does for the organization, and it's the shared values, it is the common rules that everybody understands, knows, and abides by, and it is a way that they share problem-solving approaches. The relationship, okay, structure. Well, it's really how the organizational positions, departments come together, how they're arranged, how they come together. You might have a very hierarchical type of organization with many layers. You may have a very flat organizational structure with one or two layers. It really is depends on the organization and the large nature of the organization, how they want to see how they want to see the organization fit, the pieces of the positions and the departments, how they fit together. And it develops when managers going to work tasks and seek individuals in work groups. It coordinates diverse activities and to reach the firm's objectives. We want to be able to have some kind of structure in our organization where people can obviously work autonomously to get their jobs done, but have that ability to come together and streamline some of the process and share ideas. This is just one organization giving you an idea of how they work together. Think about your personal organization where you work, or where you have worked if you're not currently working. And can you think of a word or a phrase that would describe the organizational culture? If you're working for a nonprofit or a government, can you describe the kind of culture that guides your mission or your objective for that department, whichever one you work for? We all have these organizational structures. We always have them. They very well may be different, but just kind of understand how your organization fits together, because I think this chapter would be very helpful for you. Most organizations have a formal organization chart. If they don't, or at least if you haven't seen one, you should ask. But this is kind of important because it does tell you the chain of command, and it gives you that the flow of how information may be disseminated if you're talking about from level to level. We have one, and actually we have to modify it every year for the government, make sure that the government agencies get that organizational chart, because they need to know if they have a problem, what department to go to, and what person is responsible for that type of area that they have a need. So it does help. It's actually very, very helpful. It is a top-down chart. It does not have a lot of specifics, but it is a good starting place, and it's more of a higher level type of structure. Here's an example of I wouldn't call it an organization chart, but pretty much what an organization would look like. Organization look like for a clothing store. Now, again, when you're talking about an organization chart, sometimes the organizational chart and the way it's set up may very well be more detailed or very, very limited information, which means in other words, the owner here, owner two, and owner here, they might have different layers within this department. You may have a different set of individual departments or units within this particular group here, or in this case you may have individuals in here that make up this. So sometimes the organizational chart can be very, very narrow, meaning it only has main categories, and it also can be very detailed. Assigning tasks. there are some specializations. Again, people have very specific skills, and organizations hire them for those very specific skills. That being said, sometimes your skills are specialized. They are very, very narrow. They have a very specific type of um, um, uh, um, applicability. For example, you may hire a CPA, which is a very general category, but you want a CPA that specializes or is more specific. Duties require a knowledge of taxation or a specific knowledge of, let me see, um, auditing. And again, that type of specialization is important because it allows the organization to be more efficient in what they do. It allows them to have ease of training. So an organization may have a specialization, may not, may be a very general. But the organization that has specialization, it does allow efficiency in training and allow activities to be broken into specific tasks that an employee can do a single task. A learning organization. A learning organization is one that opens communication between departments in order to increase the level of learning among employees within the organization. That's a very, very big definition. I agree with it because it's extremely thorough in the definition. I agree with it. But what does that mean to you? How does that equate to your work life? Does that have relevance to your work life? And can you actually provide some examples of how of that or an organization that is what that would be considered a learning organization based on the definition given? But what it does is it creates and sustains a kind of organization that invests in employees. It does it in many ways, mainly through training, and it does release a lot of restrictions, not a whole lot of rules. People can break out and use their creativity. It uses knowledge that's created, but it also captures it through employees. They allow them to really take a step out and do things outside the box, so to speak, and try to see what fits. There's no wrong, there's no right, just employees really trying to find out what is the best and the most creative way to get something. So they have a lot of ideas being thrown out at them. They try all the ideas. No failure is bad. Failure sometimes is good because you know what will not work. So they value those types of things. And my question to you is, have you ever been in an organization that would be considered a learning organization? And if you haven't, would you like to be a part of one? I think that the way a learning organization captures employees because they give them the room to fail. They give them the room to take a risk and almost be an entrepreneur in many ways. And that just stimulates people in more ways than you can imagine. You get the best out of people when they are able to not be so restricted in rules, but able to tap into some very different and interesting things that an organization can do to increase their market share. So it's a great thing. Departmentalization. What is that anyway? Its over specialization can have negative consequences. Now, departmentalization is going to be grouped into functional, product, geographical, and customer. And what it's doing is grouping individuals, grouping jobs into units, and that's more or less in units or groups or divisions or departments. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think departmentalization is necessary when you're talking about a government. It is necessary when you're talking about a locality. They have to have some kind of organizational structure. It has to be because it would be utter chaos. The government is mostly governed by rules, governed by laws, and departmentalization is critical. If you talk about the federal government, nothing would ever get done. Things would get lost. Organization would go out the window. So there is a place for departmentalization. But there are times when people you have a specialized work and you continually doing a specialized work, people can become bored. It can become stagnated. Job satisfaction could be a problem. The quality of work could go down. Doesn't mean it will go down, but it could. Employee turnover, the risk of increased turnover is a part of that consequence. So departmentalization does allow some flexibility, and it does give an organization a level of structure where employees won't get stuck in an overly specialized field. They have a little bit of growth. So what is a functional department or functional departmentalization, if you look here to the example where you have a president and you have these several departments, that's a more of a functional, because it's based, each department is based on a specific function, whether it be finance, which is accounting, whether it be in marketing or production or R&D. These areas have a specialization of handling work that relates specifically to finance and for specifically to marketing and sales. So that's a very easy and very standard functional departmentalization. In fact, a lot of organizations follow this because there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually pretty efficient. Product departmentalization, organizations of jobs are categorized based on the type of products. Now, if you're talking about L'Oreal, or you're talking about some other kind of company that actually produces something, this can be extremely important. Dell could be another place where the product departmentalization is critical because the nature of the work and the services and product that they provide to the customers. Stereo equipment division, computer electronics division, and this one here is going to be based on the type of product that they produce. Campbell's Soup obviously uses product departmentalization to organize its company. But because of the nature of Campbell's being global and has so many different areas where it works, geographic departmentalization is going to be important too. And again, organizations can use a combination of these depending on what they provide to the marketplace and what's the most efficient way to organize their company. Geographical departmentalization is going to be by region, country, or continent. This one I would say would be more like a Microsoft, simply because they have numerous divisions across the globe, and departmentalize them based on the region in which they are or the continent is extremely important because of the specifics of that region or rules in case of a different nation that govern it. So that's important with these multinational organizations. Customer departmentalization, and then this one is based on the needs of the different types of customers. And I would say, let me think about this. An example would be of, let me see, maybe, I don't know, Campbell's could do it, but also food the food distributor. An organization that's distributing food, he's kind of in the middle between the organization that actually produces the foods, but he may be the middleman. And an organization like that may very well have different types of departments based on the types of foods that they distribute to their customers. They have two major customers. One customers are going to be like you and me, which is consumer goods, and industrial goods would be more shipping products to other companies, other industries like restaurants maybe. Maybe restaurants and other different industries, industrial type of packaging and distribution of food. So, depending on the organization, truly how they are grouped is going to be inherent to the organization itself. But the examples that we've given are very, very comprehensive, and many organizations use them. Now, this is an organizational chart, and this is a very detailed organizational chart for a city. And you can see, how these different divisions and departments, where they are located, and to whom these individual departments and subheadings go to. Most go to the city council and the secretary. But again, the complexity of the organizational chart is really going to depend on if you're going to get a high level or a more detailed. This one here looks like a more detailed. Delegation of authority. Now, the most important thing about it being in management I have seen is not only having the authority to direct, plan the task of others, but more importantly than that is being able to provide those individuals the necessary authority to carry out their jobs. We don't want to give people so much responsibility and give them no authority. It's a losing battle, and for many years that has been the case. But we're finding that when you are in a position of authority, the most important thing you can do is invest in your people and entrust them to do their jobs and give them the authority along with the responsibility to get the job done. So delegation authority is taking your responsibility and your authority and letting others not only do the work, but make the decisions that they need to carry out their jobs. Responsibility and accountability. Obviously, a responsibility is when you say, this is what your job is, this is how it's to be carried out, and this is how you'll be evaluated. But more than that is being accountable for that work, meaning you're responsible for the work being executed correctly. You're responsible for the outcome, and you're responsible for ensuring that corrective actions are put in place if things do not happen as they should. Centralization. What is centralization? Now, a centralized government, for example, is more of a government being controlled by, maybe if it's a state, maybe by the governor. Centralized organization is going to be a top-down organization, meaning the leaders of the organization maintain the authority at that level, and they keep most of it at that level. Um, I would say an out of balance or an over-centralization of that over-centralization in the organization can cause problems, because people will be very hard to getting decisions made. You have to go through a tremendous amount of hierarchy and steps and people to get answers to your questions and the approval to do certain things. So I would say over centralization will be a backlog in workload and decision making, and it's not efficient. When you're talking about a larger organization, it's completely inefficient. Smaller organizations can get away with a centralized setup simply because it's not a lot of layers. It's maybe an owner and maybe a staff, and that's not hard to have it centralized simply because there's not a lot of layers. But when you get to larger organizations with more than 2 departments, it becomes extremely cumbersome to get things done. Thus, decentralized organizations are more of today, where each department, depending on the organizational structure, has authority to carry out its business, has the responsibility to carry out its business, and is reportable to a higher rank of the organization. Now, if we can look at these two different views of span of management, again, we're talking about a flat organization where I just mentioned owner, and here are the individual people who are responsible, whether it be department heads or managers themselves. This one here is more of a hierarchy because it has more than one layer. It actually has more than 2 layers. It actually has 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. This one here is a very tall organization, and generally speaking, governments and larger organizations have a tall will be more likely to be under this area, whereas a smaller company or more simplistic operation would lean towards a flatter organization. Organizational layers, and we just mentioned that it's just whether or not there are more than there are different layers of departments and authority within an organization. The less of the layers, I would say it would be a wider organization. They're more flat. A organization with many layers is going to be more narrow, more tall, and the span of management is going to be narrow. So you're going to be with individuals who have less responsibility. Let's take a look at that once more. These individuals will have less responsibility simply because there are so many people within all these different ranks, and that actually the responsibility, or in this one big area, is being split in these areas. That means that these individuals will have fewer amounts of responsibility simply because it's being shared among a large group of individuals, and the same will be here. Now, in a flat organization, these individuals have far more responsibility and authority simply because there's no link between, or there's no authority between the higher manager or leader or owner than the subordinates who are carrying out the task. So these individuals will have far more responsibility and authority to carry out their work. Forms of organizational structure: line and staff structure, multi-divisional structure, and a matrix structure. And again, we're just talking about just giving you some ideas of what the structures look like. What is a line structure? What does it look like? What is a line and staff structure, and basically what it looks like. And this one here is more like what I would do, simply because we have so many layers, and it's a government, so it's not really a flat. We have one set of an executive director here, but then part of his responsibilities and his authority, he delegates to the directors, who delegate it to the supervisor, who then delegate part of it to the frontline managers, etc. So we have some authority, but it definitely is shared among the layers that are under us. Multi-divisional structure. Um, a lot of organizations do operate under divisional because certain organizations will grow large, and because they're growing large, diversification is inherent, and as a result, divisions is probably the most efficient way to be able to maintain some control and some efficiency in operations. A matrix structure. I've not had this experience, but think about from your perspective and your personal experience. It's going to be a structure that's set up as teams from different departments that are creating two or more intersecting lines of authority. Meaning, this is like an information technology firm. They would more likely have a structure like this. Not that it's a bad structure, but it lends itself much more easily to maintain and manage because you're constantly working on projects, you're constantly working on different teams to try to get things done. So having your supervisor being one person may not be the best thing because you're going to be working on different projects with different project leaders, which means that you'll have more to people you'll be reporting to. So when you talk about projects being completed and projects being worked on and different individuals working on your project, um, a matrix structure is probably the most efficient way, but it does have its downfalls. And this is just giving you an idea of what it will look like if you had a matrix structure. And again, you're talking about more of a project-driven organization. And this is very efficient for project management simply because you don't want to be responding to your boss who's not involved in the project. He can't evaluate your performance. He can't really say, and he can't really have the authority to tell you to do this or that if he's not involved intimately with the project. But when you have project leaders, that means you'll not only report to your supervisor, but you'll also have accountability with the project leader who will be handling the project to which you are a member. And again, I think is the most important thing about this structure is it is far more easier to assess and to work with and to follow the flow of projects than it would be in a divisional type of structure. Groups and teams. Many years have gone by and people just work together solitary themselves and their boss, or themselves with a number of people within that department and the boss, and maybe a boss over top of the boss. And teamwork was not really something that was a big concern. But as individuals and individual companies have been more trying to become more innovative, teams have been developed. And it was as if something sparked in the industry because what happens is when they've decided to start with teams and they started using teams to help develop software or develop different types of products or even experiment on different products or pharmaceuticals, they have come to see that having individuals of a common identity with the same goal makes the whole process easier. It made things more efficient. In fact, more organizations have lent their success because of the formation of groups and teams in their work. Um, Teams work well when you're talking about software. Teams work well when you're talking about developing a product, formulating products or drugs. But now teams and groups are actually being formed in all sorts of organizations. It is extremely important to see how groups and teams have made things extremely efficient for organization, and it has opened up opportunities that they had not seen in the past. Now, working group and team, here are some differences between them. As you read through the chapter, I would think the most important thing is to know what the differences are of these, just to get an idea. My question to you is which one of these, a working group or a team, have experience in your job? Both of them, if you not had one experience with either one, which one would be more, I would say, successful with your organization? The most important thing about this class is not just understanding all these different terms and understanding why business is important and why you should learn it, but more than that is how can you take this information and apply it to your work? How does this information translate to real life, everyday business transactions that you are as an employee are involved in? How can you make your work better? How can you make your business better? How can you make your productivity within your office better? And so the one thing I want to see when you're reading through the chapter is not just reading and getting the information, but how does it relate to you, and how can you use this information even in a future job to make better decisions and to better understand how to better understand business. In government, task force and committees are huge. They are a big, big deal. Why? Because oftentimes legislators don't want to create a law if they haven't had an opportunity to evaluate it first. It is a really good way to kind of get an idea. If we were to implement this policy, we would implement this law, what effect would it have? And one of the things that they do is they form committees and they form task force. And what those task force and committees are designed to do is to evaluate a specific task, to evaluate a specific type of job, or something that's going to be reviewed, something that has to be reviewed by individuals who have specialized skills that will actually reviewing specific types of tasks. This committee would be more like an oversight committee, a committee of individuals who will be overseeing a specific process, and this is very important in government. A task force is responsible for a particular change. And again, if a law is being contemplated, but the legislators are not sure what the impact will be, they will put together a task force of individuals, maybe individuals within the government or individuals in the public sector, that could come together and, using their expertise, evaluate a specific law that they are contemplating, and they will make a decision on whether or not this particular law, what impact it would have. And the task force will come together with some specific types of things by the government. They'll say, I want you to evaluate whether or not what kind of impact this law would have on this group of individuals, or this particular jurisdiction, or this particular company. And they come back and they do their analysis, and it comprises of people within those industries who have that specialized knowledge. They come together, they do their assessment, and they generate a report. And the task force is a very big part of government, because a lot of times they want to make a certain change, but before they make it, they need to be certain that they will get the outcome that they're looking to get. And task force can generally get that. Teams can be comprised in various areas: project teams, product development teams, quality assurance teams, and self-directed work teams. I've been a part of the project team where we were required to come together and put together this project, and then determine if the project's successful, and then launch it to other organizations. It is extremely fun work. It's not always easy, because you're working with people who are not necessarily people you report to. So, for example, if you are an accountant, you're not going to be working with all fellow accountants. You're going to be working with people who are maybe in sales, maybe in marketing, maybe in human resources. So those kind of people working together with you, so it gives the diversity of the team. But they have control of a specific project. If you are coming together to devise a product, you will come together with different individuals, the design group, the architectural group, this, that, the other, and all these individuals will come together, and their whole set of parameters is to design a certain product, and you work with them. If there are individuals coming together to test or solve problems about quality, they will come together with the intent to find a problem and come together to figure out how can they resolve a problem. Self-directed projects are going to be really individuals or companies coming together on a specific issue, or they feel that they need to come together just to solve something, and then they dismantle. Now, the flow of the organization, again, this is just giving you some really good information. Managers are generally going to be on the same level, and they are generally considered colleagues. These are going to be superiors, where would be the relationship between the VP, in this case, and the manager. The vice presidents on all sides, they are all colleagues, and they're all on the same level. And any interaction upward would be to the CFO, the CEO of the organization, or president, depending on how they term that. But this is just giving you an idea of how the organization flows in terms of the hierarchy of their authority. Formal communication. As you know, communication is important, and formal communication is going to be that upward and downward communication, where upward would be from people going to their organization um, and reporting information and giving them information to make decisions. So they're going from staff upward to management. The downward communication is going to be more the VP, the CEO. They are informing individuals in a very formal way information that they need. That could be a VP to a division manager, or it could be a manager to a supervisor. But it's going to be from the top down, and these are formal levels of communication. Horizontal is going to be colleagues, and as we've seen in the previous slides, colleagues is going to be VPs to VPs or managers to managers, that type of thing. Diagonal is going to be different organizational units that communicate. And again, it's important to know how the communication flow works. My question to you, class, would be, which level of communication best describes your organization? Is it good or is it bad? Is it upward? Is it mostly an upward communication? Is it mostly a downward communication? Do you have a more of a horizontal organization, organizational communication stream, or is it diagonal? Now, people don't like grapevine because they know grapevine is more like rumor, but in fact, rumor is kind of one of the major forms of informal communication in an organization, and it's definitely informal. It's definitely something that's going to be managers really need to think about what's being said and to ensure that they address the grapevine, by disputing anything that's not correct and making more clear things that are correct. But grapevine is a very important part of communication. Even though it's informal, it's important because people will provide you feedback, and it doesn't have to be formal when they do it. I think that the most important feedback you get is going to be the feedback you get from people in just general conversation, general interaction with them. More than what you say out your mouth is really how you direct your body. And the nonverbal communication is going to be a critical part of your total message. And we can't ever disqualify nonverbal communication because it sometimes overwhelms and supersedes what comes out of our mouths. But be aware of nonverbal communication when you're speaking with people, and be aware of their style, and use that information to best communicate your message. It's just important to be aware of what's around you and how people respond with their bodies when they're talking to you. Improving communication effectiveness, more than anything, is how can we get our message through to people so that they understand what we mean and not take the wrong message. We don't want anybody to look at us and not understand what we're saying. We don't want anyone to look at us and misunderstand what we're saying. So these are some guidelines, and I think there are others, but these are most important, and we want to highlight them. But you think about the things that you have experienced in your workplace and in your relationships, and how can you improve your communication? Did I mention enough here? What things would you add? Which things are more important? Are these the order of importance? What do you think? Think about that when you're going through communication. Encouraging your employees to provide feedback. Tell people it's okay to tell me if it's not right. Let people talk. Don't interrupt. Make certain that your communication is strong and effective. And if you don't feel that it is, get training. It's okay. If you're in a management position and you're managing 15 or 20 people, you're going to have so many different personalities. It's important that you understand how to communicate with each one of those people. That makes the job very, very difficult, but it makes the job most rewarding because you have that level of diversity. But also, make certain that as a leader of the organization, that when you communicate your policies, you communicate them quickly, and you allow people to have a way to communicate, to ask you questions if they don't understand. So anything that's going to happen that requires the individual employee to have knowledge of, that's going to be formal communication. So you need to make sure that information is sent out quickly. You need to make sure that it's clear, and you need to make certain that they can come to you and ask questions if they don't understand. And that's extremely important when you're talking about communicating to your staff. So as we close the chapter, this has been 34 minutes, and it didn't mean to go this long, but I think this is a really important chapter. But as you finish the chapter, think about the 4 types of departmentalization and see if you can remember, if you could find an example each type. Also, if you can discuss among yourselves in the Q&A section or in the discussion forum, the different forms of organizational structure. think about it in light of the organizations that you have worked with or worked in or in your past or currently. And do you have any disadvantages that you can note or disadvantages of each form? Think about those things as you proceed through the chapter. And as always, thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next one.